fight to break on through. Lines are woven like a velvet chain. It's liquid power driving us insane. But the fire burns deep within our chests. We fight, we'll never rest. We rise with fists clenched high, tearing through the veil, the sky. Truth's a blade that cuts the dark. We fight, we'll never rest. We rise with fists clenched high, tearing through the veil, the sky. Truth's a blade that cuts the dark. We fight, we make our mark. They call us rebels, say we've lost our way, but freedom's blood, it fuels the fray. From the ashes comes a brighter light. We fight with all our might. See resolve in the roaring storm, breaking cages will rewrite the norm. No more silence, no more disguise. We fight with open eyes. We rise with fists clenched high, tearing through the veil, the sky. Truth's a blade that cuts the dark. We fight, we'll never rest. We rise with fists clenched high, tearing through the veil, the sky. Truth's a blade that cuts the dark. We fight, we make our mark. We fight, we make our mark.
Hey, what's going on, members? Well, YouTube, what's going on? Good to see you guys. I see a problem here. Rumble doesn't want to work right now. So you guys are going to have to hold on a second as I troubleshoot something. It looks like Rumble's servers might be down. So I've got to do a quick fix here for our members watching on Rumble and move them over to YouTube. So sorry guys, it's just gonna take just a moment here because I don't want them to miss out. It's not fair to them, but hold on a second. Give me a second to fix this. I'm kind of glad this happened on a members live because this would be really embarrassing if it happened on a on a public live where anybody can watch. So you guys, give me a second here. I'm going to get a little tricksy here. So I'm going to make this unlisted so anybody can watch, but it's also not fully public. So hopefully the members all got their link and follow it here. And then I'm going to post the link in the Discord, and hopefully that will work. So give me 1 second, guys. Man, Rumble, I tell you, like I said the other night, there was an issue with I just have issues with Rumble, even though I want it to be, I'd love it to be number one. They just have weird issues sometimes. Okay, give me 1 second, guys, and then I promise you're gonna have a show. So annoying. I can't believe it. Not cool. Not cool. All right, that'll go there. And think I'm gonna. Okay, that should bring some people in. Man, all right. What's up, guys? Sorry. What an annoying problem to have. I'm not a fan. Not a fan at all. So, anyways, everybody's gonna start moving over here, and we'll be good. We'll be good. All right. If you're on Rumble and it is not working, I just sent out. Hopefully, well, I don't know if you can hear me or what, but I did send out a new. My poor Rumble peeps. Stupid Rumble. It's working fine here. I'm using their technology to be here on YouTube. So, oh well. What's up? Okay, let me give some shout outs and then I got a show for you guys. I promise. All right, Wago Waco, what's going on? Alice. Fordham, what's up? Big B, Chad Youngkin, BN Pro, Kim Wiley on Rumble. I hope you guys move over here. Q Alerts, also known as Toe Cramp. What's up, buddy? Moose. Hope you make it over. Shogun, you can hear me on Rumble, but you can't see me. That is so weird. I don't know. I don't know, man. Rumble does weird stuff. So D6, if you're on Rumble and you can hear me, please use the link I just posted. I posted in Patreon, Discord, and the chat. And so move on over to that YouTube link, and you should be able to get in just peachy. Just peachy. And you know what? I hate doing this, but I actually am going to have to post it in the in YouTube too. Stupid, man. This is so dumb. Rumble, why are you doing this to me? All right. Hopefully that gets everybody over. Okay. Cool. All righty. All right. Well, glad you guys made it over. Please make the move over to YouTube for tonight. Just tonight. I will continue to keep streaming, but yeah, not fun to have to fix on the fly. This is one of those deals where you could you only know how it's working when you actually start the stream, which is super lame. But anyways, can you see me on YouTube, Shogun? I mean, right? Yeah, you can. Okay. Anyways, Kim, you made it over. Patrice, good to see you. Pedro Rod, what's up, guys? All right. Well, cheers, guys. We made it to a members live. We got some interesting stuff going on today. So I'm gonna go through some news quick because there's some big stuff happened today, and but it won't take long. And then I'm gonna go through. I prepared a little something for you guys tonight. So it's something that's been on my heart, and I really wanted to break it down into a way that was easily digestible and understandable. And I think it's important, especially for the time we're in. So we're going to get into that. So Kathy, what's going on? Good to see you. All right, so let's start. This is the Hall of Press. Let's honor our Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump. Auto pen. I mean, I'm sorry. This is so funny. That is so funny. That's just like one of the best trolls I've ever seen. Just unbelievable. He is the best. It's on. Oh man. So anyways, that was posted today from the White House. So thought you guys all needed to see that, because I'd be sad for anybody who doesn't see that. That's just comedy gold right there. Just unbelievable. So okay. Anyways, so that's news. The next news is James O'Keefe, bombshell today. All right. So he got this senior DOJ guy on camera talking to one of his people. Reveals Epstein was CIA, confirms rapes occurred while Bill Clinton was on the plane. He says President Trump is protecting other people, but he's not protecting himself because there's nothing there. So more evidence that Trump is not in the Epstein files. Says, I've interviewed all the victims. There's never been an instance where Trump was on a plane with these kids and the rapes occurred. That can't be said for Clinton. It can't be said for others. They didn't want to go after him because he's an asset for the United States and Israel. I've not talked about it yet, but soon to come out, he was a CIA informant. So fascinating stuff. I recommend watching the video. We'll find out, but they're all this stuff. We'll find out if this guy was, but playing a game, who knows? We'll find a job catching. Again, it's if this guy, when he says Trump, I think it's going to be build up, but we'll see. Weird stuff on my frame and several issues with. I hope it's not. But I wonder. I did install a new extension. I wonder if that's messing with it. Let me see what happens if I remove this extension. Okay, I wonder if that'll fix anything. Oh, it does look like that's helping. Okay, well, maybe I fixed it. So strange. Sorry guys. I've been if you're just jumping on, I've been having some stream issues tonight, so I'm kind of troubleshooting as I'm streaming. But man, as soon as I moved the extension though, the stream connection got better, so it makes me wonder now if it would actually work on Rumble, but it doesn't look like it's going to. So bummer. So weird. Computers, man, they just like to mess around, don't they? Okay, let's keep moving. All right, President Trump, today there was a shooting at an ICE facility in Texas. They tried to kill ICE agents. They missed. Instead, they killed detainees, which means they killed illegal immigrants being held there. Still terrifying, still sad. It's these shootings going on, this political stuff. It's awful, but Trump is coming out saying he just basically it's ramping up. I've been briefed on the deadly shooting at the ICE field office and do their jobs, remove the worst of the worst from the country. Left Democrats constantly demonizing law. Radical left terrorists must be stopped. Organization. I will be signing an executive order to the Democrats to stop this rhetoric against ICE. And is it buffering again? All right. Some people are saying rebooting. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's happening. I can cut off Rumble. Let me see if it just lets me cut. Well, actually, it might not let me cut Rumble because Rumble is the main platform Rumble Studio streams to. No, my internet connection is actually very strong. It's a Rumble issue. If you look on Rumble, if you were over there, it says it's waiting for an encoding server. So there's some going on with the server on Rumble. And sorry, guys, if it's buffering. If it completely cuts out, please let me know. Like if it gets really bad, let me know. I can restart the stream. But if it's just a little bit, maybe we can push through. All right. So you guys let me know. It looks like overall my stream is looking okay. So we'll keep it for now. But you guys, please let me know if it really gets bad. All right. I need to know. I don't want it to. I don't want to be a terrible stream. So you guys, it's better again. So that's good. All right. The internet is not the issue. It's not. It's something going on with Rumble Studio. Anyways, I have a direct line. Country Computers will tell you. I have my Ethernet cable set up, so there is no disconnect in my internet at all. I'm direct connected. So, anyways, obviously this is ramping up. It's going to be interesting to see how they do this. JD Vance had a nice little back and forth today. So John Favreau, who is a total hardcore lefty, runs the Pod Save America podcast, which is hardcore leftist, calls out Vice President. He says JD Vance today, not a reliable source of information, which is insane. And then JD Vance replied with something I totally voted for. He says, a gunman had anti-IS messaging carved on the bullets he used. What precisely did I get wrong, dipshit? I'm so here for it. I'm so here for it. And just great stuff. So anyways, JD Vance just crushing it. But I love this, you know, and this is what we're going to end up talking about here in a minute. But I love the desire and the willingness to just go after it without backing down. And that's where we're at. You know, we've talked about it already. This is not a time for unity. This is a time for victory. This is a time for winning. And there are, you know, and I'm going to talk about this from a faith perspective because that's how I see everything, especially Christian faith. And I grew up my whole life, and I'm seeing it now in the church, a lot of pastors trying to play that game that you know, we need to reach out across the aisle, both sides. We need to come together as a country. That all sounds great, and I used to believe it. I used to believe it, and I used to believe that was the Christian perspective, and how it should be. But I've completely changed, and I'm going to present that to you guys why in a minute here. Because I think it's extremely important. And I know most of you guys who watch are of the same faith, or at least adjacent to it. And so I think it's an important thing to share, because if you are at church or with your friends and they're trying to play that game, we need to have answers. We need to have biblical answers. We need to have historical answers. We need to have reasons why this time needs to be different. And why the rhetoric's changing, and why we can support JD Vance and Trump and our administration when they're refusing to back down and play that same game. And it's been going on forever. I mean, every time this kind of stuff's happened, it's always been a call to unity in the nation. It's never worked. Things have only gotten worse. So again, it just that alone should be enough, but plenty more reasons. Togram says he caught my new small logo on the video. AF. Yeah, man. Oh, American Fire and Cozy AF, you know, it works both ways. Vimeo did the same thing for you, country. Togram says in Florida, open carry becomes legal tomorrow. Really? Well, that's awesome. Oh yeah. Vance is a gangster. He's going to be the president for 8 years after Trump. Just watch. So, but Vance is out there. He is doubling down. He breaks down how Democrats broke the law under Biden, makes it clear Obama must be prosecuted, says they've got to face real justice, not just words, not just getting before a committee, be prosecuted. So I love that. I love this line. I think the only thing the far left really responds to is power. So good. And this is where we're at. Like, and he's exactly right. And, you know, I watch, Mark Halperin, who does the show Two Way, which excellent political show. It might be the best political show out there right now. But Halperin is trying to play both sides all the time, and it drives me nuts. He keeps saying how, like, he just wishes tone down the rhetoric, the president, vice president. And it just drives me nuts how he just, even though he is pretty well at reading the room on both sides a lot of the time, he just can't see somebody who's covered politics for 40 years. He just can't see how that never has worked, and why this time has to be different in order to end it. And this is one of the reasons right here. Now I shared this on X. I even shared this on YouTube earlier, but here's the politically motivated violence in the past 5 years, left versus right. And this, you know, they're out there lying and saying that the right has done more violence, but this is what happens when you include the riots, the BLM riots from George Floyd. This is what happens. So politically motivated violence in the U.S., 13,709 instances from the left, only 322 instances from the right in the last 5 years. I'm sorry, folks, that's not a both sides issue. That's not even close to a both sides issue. That's one side is trying to kill the other side issue. You know, there's always going to be crazies on both sides, but this over here is, it's not even, it's it's like 3% of what they're doing. So, I mean, there you go. If, data speaks very loud, and this is one of those instances. And when they're telling us to tone it down, they're going after Trump and Vance for their rhetoric, and they're saying both sides need to tone it down. While they're saying that, and going after us for being angry and hurt over what happened with Charlie Kirk, Hillary Clinton's out here saying these terrible things. I'll just, hear her words. Hear how awful this woman is. So Christian white men apparently are the reason everything's falling apart. Oh, was there no sound on that? Sorry, guys. Let me try that again. Well, that's weird. I see sound. I cut off Hillary. Well, that's weird. Let me try again. You guys let me know if you hear this. Can you hear it now? That's so weird because it's on and it shows that it's registering. Okay, well, I guess there's just all kinds of stream issues tonight. Sorry, guys. It's weird. I didn't change anything except for that one. All right, well, I'll just tell you what she said. She said the idea you could turn the clock back and try to recreate a world that was never dominated by, let's say it, white men of a certain persuasion, certain religion, certain ideology, doing such damage to which we should be aiming for. Certain religion. She's talking about white Christian men. So she's telling us that white Christian men are the problem in America, and that's a direct assault on Christianity. So how can we have unity with these people? That's where we're at, and they're just doubling down on it. They're not trying to back off. They're not looking for unity. They're not looking to tone it down. They're doubling down instead. And this is why this has to be fully defeated. We can no longer tolerate the left as they are. We have to defeat their ideology. We have to defeat them legally. We have to make sure they pay the price for all the crookedness, the corruption over the years. Has to happen. And this is why I'm so happy the president and the vice president and the people in the administration are not looking for unity this time. And so we're going to talk about this because it's important. And again, in people so simply, people don't like conflict, right? And that's okay. That's normal. It'd be weird if everybody just wanted to fight all the time, especially good people. Where would we ever get if that was the case? But the problem is that in Christians, we've read our scripture and we've been taught a lot about turn the other cheek, a lot about being peacemakers, and all that's true. And we've but there's some other issues we've faced. It's the first martyr was Stephen in the book of Acts, and after that the gospel did start picking up speed. Jesus obviously was killed and then rose, and that's the great story of victory, is that he submitted to those authorities in that, and the miracle came. So we look at those things and rightly so believe that, like, if we suffer at the hands of others, that God will make amazing things out of it. And that's absolutely true. But we've taken it a step further, and we've literally gotten to the point where the Christians in America, especially the pastoral Christians, most pastors now, they teach that we should just kind of sit back no matter what and just pray and always seek peace with everybody, no matter what, no matter where it's at. The problem with that is that the Bible is actually doesn't paint that picture. In fact, where it does paint that in some areas, it shows us that in some areas, as I just illustrated, it also shows the opposite in other times. And so what does that tell us? It tells us it's not either or, it's both and. It is understand the context that you're living in, understand the place you're living in. Well, we live in a much, much different time and government and opportunity than Jesus did, Stephen did, the disciples did when they were all martyred, except for John. He was never martyred, but he was exiled. We live in a very different time. They lived in a time where they were not only the very few, they were against their own religious background, which is Judaism. And so they were being persecuted extremely hard by the Jews. And then they were also living in a time of the Roman Empire. And the Romans, for a time, saw them as a threat. Now, the Romans did not persecute them as hard as the Jews did. And that's, if you read your history, after Jerusalem was destroyed in AD 70 and Nero died, the persecution of Christians lightened up considerably under Rome. But the Christians still weren't in charge until Constantine came along and became a Christian emperor of Rome in the 400s. So, but the point is that the Christians never had power when the Gospels were written, when the New Testament was written. And so they were dealing with an oppressive system, an oppressive religious system, and oppressive government system. And they were not just a minority, they were the minority of minorities. We're talking about, to that day and age, Christians seemed like a very small cult, like very small, like smaller than Jehovah's Witnesses are today. They would have been making documentaries about Christians back then, about, this small cult of 50, 100 people, 1,000 people. And so that was the difference. Well, fast forward to today, we live in a country that was formed by Christian principles, formed by Christian traditions, and formed by mostly men who were Christian. Now, some of them were deists, and that's always thrown around as like, gotcha, buddy, they weren't Christians, they were deists. Well, you know what a deist is? A deist basically still believes in the same God of the Bible. It just believes he's not very interested in intervening in our world situation. He's like sitting out there watching us, but he still created us. He still gave us natural law. He still created the world. He still determined what was moral and what wasn't. So the difference between a deist and a Christian is basically just how involved is this God in our world. That's really the difference. There's some other differences here and there, but the idea is that they still believe in the same moral structure. They still believe in the same creation. They still believe that there is a God. He's the God of the Bible, and so on and so forth. So when they throw out that they were deists, they weren't Christian nonsense, it doesn't mean much. It doesn't mean much. It means they're uneducated or they're purposely misleading. Okay, that's what that means when people throw that the founding fathers were deist stuff at you. And by the way, they weren't all deists, just a few of them were. Jefferson, Franklin, and a couple others. So anyways, having said all that, our country in our day and age, not only were we created by Christian traditions, Christian law, Christian ideals, Christian value of human life, Christian men, not only were we created by all that, our country was, we also are still the majority. And so in a republic where we vote, where we democratically elect our leaders. So that means we have a responsibility not to act as if we are the minority that's being oppressed. We have a responsibility to act as the majority and to rule our nation. The U.S. is our nation. It is Christian. It is majority Christian, significantly majority Christian, like 65%. And that's the lowest it's been in a long time. Actually, it got down to 62% at one point, but we're rising again. And so we've got to stop acting as if we are the oppressed in this country, and we got to start acting as if we are the leaders of this country. We are the head, not the tail. And that's what all these people, these like pastors and everybody miss. It's that they're acting as if we need to continue acting as if we're the minority, and we're just barely surviving in this country. And there's no talk of stewardship. There's no talk of leading, any of that. And it's because of this defeatist theology that we're just waiting for everything to get worse so Jesus can rapture us away. By the way, was anybody raptured yesterday? I still haven't met anybody or have heard of anybody who was raptured yesterday. So I think that fell through again. But anyways, but the point is, it's that defeatist mentality. Things got to get worse and worse and worse. And so they don't even try. Well, guess what? Whatever you believe about the rapture, if you believe like I do, that it's not going to happen and we are here to stay until Jesus comes back and helps us fully take over the rest of the world, it's either that or no one knows and it'll get taken away. But in the meantime, whatever you believe, we're here. And we have a responsibility to reign in the area where we are leaders. And we are the leaders in the U.S. And there's no doubt about it. And right now we have a Christian government on top of that. So here is a Christian case for Christians resisting overreach, and also, and what I will say is not just resisting overreach, but also being aggressive in pushing back and leading, and not just accepting whatever the government has for us, or the left, or the idea that we can't always live in unity with those who hate us, would persecute us, would completely co-opt our values and try to change everything. So and so this is basically the case for why we cannot unify with the left. And so we got to start with Romans 13, which many people quote as always obey the government, because it says government was instituted by God, and here are its uses. And so submit to the authorities, blah, blah, blah. Okay, because they do have a God-given role. Punish evil, commend good. And Paul says rulers are God's servants for your good. Well, that's in the best case scenario. Romans 13, 3 through 4, say that 10 times fast, says, for rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. He's God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. He is a servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Now, there's more context here, and within the context, and I'm going to present a lot of that context. But this doesn't mean every single ruler that's in power is what Paul writes here. What it means is that the function of government is God's idea, and the place of an authority that idea of government was that this idea of government God created is to enact justice. That's basically what Paul's saying. Can you notice, and this is one way you can tell this, is because he's not saying specific names here. He doesn't say Herod is God's authority, so, servant to do good. He doesn't say Augustus or Nero is God's authority to do good. He just says the ruler. Okay, there's a reason it's generic, because that's God's design. But as we often know, God's design is not how things turn out. So a balanced view of Romans 13 is Paul himself resisted injustice. So there were times for it. Acts 16, Acts 22. Submission does not equal blind obedience, which also doesn't mean blind capitulation. Acts 5:29 tells us a higher principle. Peter and the apostles answered, "We must obey God rather than men." And here's one of the interesting things about God. If you actually read the full Bible, is that God often surprises us. We can't just put him in a box. We can't just say, oh, God always does this. No, it's simply not true. Now, there are certain things God doesn't ever do, except for when he does. Yeah. I mean, for the most part, God holds to the principles he created on this earth. And one of those is like the principle of free will. But there are instances, they're very rare, where God does co-opt a person's free will, but it's only when they've given and rebelled so much that God basically is like, well, you're done. And the one example I can think of is hardening Pharaoh's heart. And it says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Well, what happened is that Pharaoh wouldn't free the people, and God gave him several chances. Well, he finally got to the point where God was like, okay, you're just not going to do this. So I'm going to make you even harder and more stubborn so I can get to the point where I can push things so far that the people are let go and I can destroy you so they can be free. And that happens when the angel of death comes, kills all the firstborn of Egypt, which is equal justice for when the Egyptians killed the firstborn of all the Israelites. And then he lets them go, but his heart is hardened. And as soon as they leave, he decides, I'm going to go get them back. And he chases them into the Red Sea. And in the Red Sea, the Israelites cross. And when Pharaoh and his men are going through the Red Sea, it falls on them and it kills them all. So God wipes out all the leadership of that nation so that the Israelites are free and no longer have to worry about being chased down and enslaved. Why did God do that? Because Pharaoh's heart was already hardened on his own. And so God just pushed it to the edge. He was like, I can't deal with this, man. I have to protect my people. So there's an example of God subverting one of his own basic principles. But then again, this is why we say he's God, and why he tells Job, you're the clay. I'm the sculptor. It's like, who are you to talk to me when Job's complaining to him? So, let's let God be God. But so more examples. Resistance in the New Testament. The apostles defied rulers who tried to silence the gospel in Acts 4:19-20. Peter and John answered them, whether it is right in the sight of God to listen to you rather than to God, you must judge, for we can't but speak of what we have seen and heard. In other words, anytime somebody asks you, it doesn't matter how powerful they are, to do something opposite of what you know is right, you have a biblical excuse, I guess is the word, biblical calling to resist. And that's an example of not submitting to the authorities. So this is why context in the Bible is so important. So in Romans 13, he's like, God instituted authorities. We submit to the authorities so that we can live quiet, the authorities to go after evil. Well, here's an example where the authorities are going after good, and the apostles show us like, oh, well, we got to obey God over you guys. Paul said to them, they have beaten us publicly, uncondemned men who are Roman citizens. No, let them come themselves and take us out. Now, this is an interesting one. So the Pharisees were beating up Paul and I don't know who was with him at this time. It might have been Luke. Can't remember off the top of my head. But they're beating him for preaching the gospel. Very angry. And Paul, in his defiance, finally, when they're like, you're going to submit, they're asking him to do more, to stop. And they're going to take it even further. And Paul says, guess what? We're Roman citizens. So you make them come do it. And then they all freak out. They're like, oh my God, we did this to a Roman citizen. This would be like being in another country for us as US citizens, and them saying like, we're mad at you guys for, I don't know, for telling somebody about Jesus or something. And them about to put us in prison, and we say, hold up, we're US citizens. Do you really want to go there? Because when you're a US citizen, you got the whole government backing you up. You're supposed to anyways. So that's what Paul's imploring them to, and it freaks them all out. But that's another example of defiance. He didn't just turn his cheek and take it. He stood up. There's lots of examples of resistance in the Old Testament. We already talked about Moses versus Pharaoh confronting tyranny. Exodus 5:1, thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go. They might hold a feast to me in the wilderness. We have the Hebrew midwives versus Pharaoh to preserve life. In Exodus 1:17, the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. They were supposed to kill all the firstborn males. Ehud versus King Eglon is in Judges. He delivers Israel from Moabite oppression. And it says the people of Israel cried out to the Lord, and the Lord raised up for them a deliverer, Ehud. And the Lord gave Eglon, king of Moab, into his hand. So Ehud kills Eglon, king of Moab. Gideon is as well. Then there's Daniel and his friends versus Babylon. So they're kidnapped. Babylon comes in, destroys Jerusalem, takes Daniel, all the Jews over into Babylon, and is like, all right, you're ours now. You live here. And if Daniel and his friends were just like, well, we got to do what every authority tells us, they would not have done this. But they say, we won't serve your gods or worship your golden image. They stand up to it. They do other acts as well. But you know what? In this, they find favor in the house. And that's really interesting as well. Nebuchadnezzar and later Cyrus and Darius, Daniel becomes a trusted advisor to them. So there's a lot going on there, but it shows again, we have the right under God to stand up when it's time to stand up, to not submit. And when I think of like, this was all in circumstances where they were the minority, the oppressed minority. So when you're the majority, which in all these situations are not, most of history is the Jews were not the majority and neither were the Christians. But where is it about just unity with these people? Where is that? Where is compromise to get along? I don't see it. Daniel 6:10, when Daniel knew the document had been signed, he went to his house, got down on his knees 3 times a day, prayed, gave thanks before his God as he'd done previously. This was in direct defiance of the order that they could not pray to anybody but the ruler. Then we have Jehoiada versus Athaliah, overthrew an illegitimate ruler. That's 2 Kings 11:14. And when Athaliah heard the noise of the guard and the people, she went in the house of the Lord. She cried, treason, treason. Elijah versus Ahab and Jezebel, confronted corruption and idolatry. I love that story. I mean, Elijah was just a thorn in their side. They were the king and queen of Israel, which, hey, there you go, that you have a majority ruled country of Jews, and then a corrupt leader takes it over. And the prophet, who in this case for us would be the Christian, stands up to him and basically is like, you guys are doing evil in our land. We're going to purge it from you. He says, I have not troubled Israel, but you have in your father's house, because you have abandoned the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals. Well, I'm telling you guys, when you believe a man can become a woman, when you believe it's okay to abort children, especially up to the day of birth, when you believe theft is okay so long as you're stealing from rich people, when you believe it's okay to kill people who disagree with you, when all the stuff the far left now believes in, I mean, that's abandoning. That's completely abandoning not only our social contract, but definitely commandment of the Lord in a Christian nation. And sorry, that's just not okay. Jesus was respectful to rulers, but never compromised. He said, "My kingdom's not of this world. For this purpose I was born. For this purpose I came in the world to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who knows the truth listens to my voice." So our responsibility in majority culture, we're called to influence and not retreat. You're the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world. A city set on a hill can't be hidden. I feel like Christians have hidden for far too long. We have, yes, we have influence. We've been on TV. We still go out on the street sometime and preach to people. But the one area where we've hidden completely is in the political realm. And yes, we've had some people go into it, absolutely. But the majority has always kind of been like, let's not get too political. We have disagreements with the other side, blah, blah, blah. Let's get along with them. Well, the problem is we've separated politics from our faith. We've acted like they're two different things. You can't do that. You simply cannot do that. And there is absolutely no case of that being done in ancient Israel, and even in Rome. Wasn't done at all. In fact, in Rome, they all believed in the gods and worshiped the gods, Jupiter and Neptune and all them, but they also believed that Caesar was a god. And once you became Caesar, you were technically a god. I don't see any separation of church and state there. Constantine, the Caesar who finally became Christian and declared Rome as a Christian nation, the first time that ever happened in the 400s. Well, he immediately made the government and everybody Christian. He just declared it. So there's just no connection to, biblically speaking, of this keep our religion out of our politics. There's just nothing there. In fact, the early Christians totally understood this. In fact, when Rome set up the papacy, when the Catholic Church set that up, and Christendom, which was basically Europe at the time, they all considered themselves Christian nations. The kings all considered themselves servants to God. And the Catholic Church was very involved in all the major decisions that the kings would make. And you know what it did? There was war between nations still, even when they were under the same church and all that, but it was much less than it would have been otherwise. So the church, despite and don't get me, lots of corruption in the papacy, lots of corruption in the Catholic Church in those days. They abused their power often. All that's true. There's a reason Reformation happened. But it stood before the Reformation. There was 1,000 years before it got so bad that people rebelled. 1,000 years. And during that time, Europe was united under the same religion. And guess what? Europe thrived. Europe grew and thrived and was able to England grew into the greatest empire the world had ever seen. There's a lot of amazing things happened during that time. They call it the Dark Ages. You know why they call it the Dark Ages? It wasn't really the Dark Ages. They call it the Dark Ages, and this is all a psyop on us historically. They call it the Dark Ages because it was the era most influenced by Christianity, where Rome fell. And when Rome fell, yes, the benefits of that great empire went away. So the unity, the power, a lot of the architecture and stuff, the foundations of roads and aqueducts, a lot of that was lost because it's just much harder to get that stuff done when you don't have a massive group of people, which yes, include a lot of slaves, who could mobilize and build. Okay, so that was lost for a time. But what happened during that time is people turned to the church for leadership. And yes, it's abused at some point, don't get me wrong. But it also brought about the European tradition. It built Europe into what it became, which was the most influential thing in the earth. I mean, we come from Europe. America doesn't exist without Europe first. Okay. So that, anyways, all that to say, they call it the Dark Ages because everybody and their thinking in Europe during that time in Western civilization was influenced by Christianity. And so they want us to think it was dark and disgusting and horrible. But if you actually look at the beautiful art that came out during that time. Look at the scientific breakthroughs that came out during that time. It was one thing after another. The culture, that's where our form of democracy was born, our republic ideals. You can go back to Greece and you can find a lot of the beginnings of it, but the law, the common law that came out of that was basically Greece's ideas of democracy plus Rome's ideas of republic, and you mix those two, and then you throw in the Christian traditions, and all that born out becomes America. And so all that to say is that Christians for thousands of years understood the best way to run a country is to have it directly involved with the religion. And when the founding fathers wrote that the government shall choose no religion, they didn't mean not Christianity. In fact, all of them were Christians, or like I said, deists, which is Christian adjacent. They all believed in the Bible. And the one thing they didn't want was they didn't want the government to say we're Catholic. They didn't want the government to say we're Lutheran or we're Quaker. They didn't want that, Methodist, whatever it was. That's what they meant. Back then, that's what they called it. Catholics would yell at Protestants, say you're a different religion. But that's how tight-knit Europe was around Christianity. That just having different belief systems in the same religion, in the same faith, believing in Jesus, you literally thought the other person believed a different religion. Now, we're all different denominations, but we're all Christian. That's what we say now. That's how much we've evolved in our thinking in the church since then. But back then, that's what it was. It was different religions. That's what they called it. They never in a million years, the founding fathers never in a million years thought we could become Islamic or we could become Jewish. They never thought of that, or Hindu or Buddhist. They didn't think in a million years any of that would ever happen. And why would it? And why would they think that? Because every single one of their influences, every single influence in the young nation of the United States of America was Christian. There's like, without fail, you could throw in a little bit of some Enlightenment atheism in there, but they look down on some of like Voltaire and stuff of their belief systems. There's a reason they talk about every man's created equal. In the founding documents, there's literally an allusion to God, by their creator. They're talking about God in the founding documents of our country. So, anyways, all this to say that the founding fathers never envisioned our country being run without religion. But we in the Christian church have gotten to the point where we've allowed this indoctrination to get into us. We've allowed them to convince us of separation of church and state, which comes from a letter that Jefferson wrote. It has nothing to do with our Constitution. They've allowed us to believe that. They've used the gospel to be like Jesus wasn't political. Well, Jesus isn't the only part of the Bible. And actually, Jesus was very political if you understand the context of the times. But let's say you're right, and Jesus he did his mission and at that time, and it didn't get involved very politically. Fine, okay. We'll ignore all context and everything. We'll just take you at your word at that. Is that the only part of the Bible? No, there's a reason we have the whole stinking thing. And so, again, once you understand this, and it took me years to understand this, but this is why I can say very safely within my faith, within my perspective of things, that I'm done playing the game. And I'm glad we have a president and a vice president and an administration that are also done playing the game. We cannot unify with the far left. We must defeat them once and for all in every way possible, not without physical violence. We just have to. It has to be done. And guess what? If you're not religious, if you're atheist or Jewish or whatever, well, Christian nations are great places to live for those kind of people in modern times. They just are, because Christians believe that you have a right to not believe. We're not going to force that on you. We don't do forced conversions. Some archaic Christians did centuries ago, but that's not one Christian today would do that. That's not who we are. That's the American experiment created by Christians, created a nation where it's been so free that we've allowed several other religions, ideologies to permeate and grow in our nation safely. So you don't got to worry about that. But as a Christian and as part of the vast majority of this country, I can say that, you know what? I'm tired of people attacking and brain rotting children. I'm tired of people ruining kids' lives forever because they're ruining their identities and lying to them. I'm tired of having to even think of the fact that we could have a government run by communists who are humanists and worship climate change and the earth over an actual God, and think humans should be depopulated. That's sickening. I'm tired of that. That shouldn't even be an option in America. And I don't mean it shouldn't be an option legally, because I do believe in freedom of thought. I don't think it should even be possible to get close to that, because if we were doing our job and we were actually telling the truth and we were actually showing what works, and we were being outspoken and we were taking it to them instead of trying to just get along with them and be nice, if we were doing that, we wouldn't have these issues. We wouldn't have had a Barack Obama come to power. We wouldn't have had a Kamala Harris come to power. We wouldn't have had a George Bush come to power or a Clinton. These things would not have happened because we would have been doing our job by actively engaging as the majority. But as of today, most Christians chilling, sitting on their butts, not getting involved, just want to get along, don't want to be bothered. 30% of Christians aren't even registered to vote. And they hide behind, well, it's got to get worse. It's got to get worse so we can get raptured. Or they hide behind, Jesus said to turn the other cheek. They'll know us by our love. We just need to get along. That's nonsense. When the Bible says they'll know us by our love, it says a love of each other, how we get along. Basically, what it means is Christians should be loving each other so well in our communities, should be loving our families so well, should be building such an amazing society within our communities that everybody else is jealous and says, I want that because over here it sucks. Over here we're poor. Over here there's abuse. Over here the fathers leave. Over here, the mothers cheat. Over here it's awful. I want what they have. Look what the Christians are doing. The Christians they're great to each other. They never steal from each other. They build healthy, amazing families. They hire each other and they thrive in their businesses. That is supposed to be the way we love each other. And the world looks at it and says, oh my God, they are the best at it. And you know what? When Christians do actually live the way they're supposed to live, that's exactly what happens. There's a reason why Christian churches, once they grow, they tend to be doing pretty well because Christians look out for each other. There's a reason for that. But we took that to mean that we just need to be nice to everybody, even when they hate us, they want to destroy us, they want to destroy everything we believe in. No, we reach out to these people, we're kind to them, we say, hey, like, here's an opportunity for us to connect. Once they say no, once they say screw you, pal, we shake the dust off our feet and leave. That's what Jesus told the disciples to do. So again, context is so important. And right now we have a side. Hillary Clinton, I just showed you, even though you couldn't hear it. Right now we have an entire side, millions of people, a large percentage of an entire political party who hate everything we stand for, who would kill us at a moment's notice. Charlie Kirk proves it. Who would take everything away from us if they could, who just want us silenced because they're so terrified of our speech. They've taken over the universities, so they can't teach. We don't learn truth. Our kids don't learn truth. It's just overreach, 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 push, push, push. And for decades, Christians have just been like, oh, no, brother, we love you anyways. Nope. Instead, we should have been shaking the dust off our feet at them, saying, okay, peace to you, man. I'm out. And by the way, we're in charge. So sucks to be you. Later. And then they can stew in their rot, in their hate, in their bile, in their lies. They can stew, and their lives can fall apart. And the hope is that someday they get so sick of it, they see everything working over there, and they say, man, we should join them. Or what are we thinking? So in America, the U.S. sovereignty rests with the people, and the people are Christian. It says exercising civic rights equals faithful stewardship. That's why we have to get involved. And that doesn't mean run for office. Sometimes it just means speaking up. Sometimes it means allowing yourself to feel a little uncomfortable. It definitely means you cannot afford to sit out. Silence equals surrender to the influence to the wicked. 1 Timothy 2, 1-2. First of all, then, I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high position. We may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. That's the goal. We may lead a peaceful and quiet life, dignified in every way. That's where we want to get to. Respect authority, fear God above all. It says, be subject to the Lord, for the Lord's sake, to every human institution, but not every human person. Honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the emperor. So honor people face to face, but love the brotherhood. That's the fellow believers. Fear God, honor the emperor, honor the position. So we have to push back. We have to, and again, anyways, guys, I wanted to paint that picture for you guys today, break it down so that you would have an understanding and something to bring up when this stuff's going on. Because right now, it's really ramped up. And one of the reasons it's ramped up is, I was thinking about this today. So the left has run our institutions for the most part for decades, whether it's the colleges, the media, most of our government, even though we've had some, Republican presidents or Republican senates, whatever. I mean, but most of it was uniparty, and they were weak. So they caved to the left more and more, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And in that, in our weakness and our just waiting for things to get worse, and this defeatist loser victim mentality, just waiting for the rapture to come, we allowed them to just take over. And we were on the inside, the part of us that knew it was wrong, we just were getting more and more frustrated. And the left hated us the whole time. And they were growing and getting worse themselves. but it seemed more peaceful, but it's only because we were playing along. We were capitulating to them. We were giving in to them. We were submitting. And then what happened? Trump comes along, and he's the first one who spoke to all of us and convinced us, hey, we can stand up. We can do something different. And the left hated it. And so things aren't more divided now than they've ever been. That's just a lie. And they're telling us that because they want to blame it on Trump. No, what really happened is that this is the first time we've pushed back on them in a real way, in a way that's mattering and effective. And because we're pushing back, they're just showing us who they really were all along. That's what's happening. That's why things are more heated. That's why it feels so much more dangerous. And that's why it feels like the country's more divided. But that's not the truth at all. It's not more divided. They're just finally showing us who they really are because we finally said no. And now you're seeing what that does. So it's we're in the battle right now. It's been a battle. Really, it's been a battle for a long, long, long time. But the tide turned in 2016 when Trump won that first election. And the amazing thing is that when Biden came in 2020, we kept fighting. We didn't give in. We didn't go back to the old ways. And we owe that. We owe that fighting spirit to Trump. We do. And it's one of the reasons I am so loyal to the guy. Because he didn't just teach me to be tougher and to be more outspoken. He taught half the nation to do it. And he's going to go down as one of the greatest leaders in American history. We're going to look back. I'm going to be telling my grandkids about him, my great-grandkids. But we needed a hero, and we got one. And he was not who we expected. He was crude and had a shady past and did all kinds of stuff that was just not Christian. But you know why God did that? Because God loves to shake his people. Because his people get way too comfortable and we get set in our ways and we start believing things. We start forgetting the context of the Bible and we just hold to certain principles. And God's like, nope, it's time to wake you guys back up. Because a woken up church does amazing things. A woken up church fought the Crusades. And we've all been told the Crusades were awful, but guess what? They weren't. Awful things happened during the Crusades, but the Crusades themselves were not awful. Do you know what the Crusades accomplished? The Crusades stopped Islam from taking over Europe. If the Crusades hadn't happened, Europe would have been conquered by Islam, and we'd have a whole different history. So a woken up church fights the Crusades. A woken up church builds a nation, fights, and creates the first free nation in world history, our American Revolution. A woken up church is willing to fight to end slavery. A woken up church changes nations. It changes the world. And it brings all the prophetic stuff of the Bible about the nations changing because of us, because the light of the glory spreading throughout the world. It shows you it's true. And so church is waking up again. MAGA is 90% Christian. And there's a reason why MAGA is so strong. It's people who have values, but have also said, we're done. We're done. And what we need is to make sure that it stays that way, that we don't play the game, that we don't give in. So, anyways, all right. Love you guys. I appreciate you. That was a nice long rant. So hope I made sense. Hope I didn't get too all over the place for you. I hope this is something I've thought about for years and years and years. As somebody who is a pastor, who is raised by a pastor, who has taught many Bible classes, who's been studying the Bible for 25 plus years. just somebody who's been deeply, deeply into all this stuff. Went to the greatest ministry schools in the world. Listen, I have really, really battled with how do we juxtapose what a lot of pastors and biblical tradition in America, at least, is teaching versus how we can change our nation for the better. And that's what I shared with you tonight, is where I've come. So anyways, on that note, guys, God bless you. It's getting a little late, and we're going to do another public live tomorrow. But members, thank you so much for your support. You guys are the absolute best. I'm sorry Rumble didn't work tonight. That was weird. I'll try again tomorrow. Hopefully it works tomorrow. But for now, you guys have the link. And if you want to share this one with your Christian friends or somebody, if they need, you feel like they could help them, or it could help them understand, feel free to. I'm okay with that. Feel free to. But thank you guys for your support, making this channel work. You guys are the best. Love y'all, and I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great night. Take care.